Caraxes was a serpentine red dragon with a distinctive screeching roar. Known as the Bloodworm for his crimson coloring and fierce nature, he had an odd body shape, longer and narrower than typical war dragons, almost snake-like. Despite these characteristics, Caraxes was one of the most formidable battle dragons of his generation. First bonded to Prince Aemon, Caraxes was later claimed by Prince Daemon Targaryen. As seen in House of the Dragon, Daemon and Caraxes participated in the Stepstones War around 106 to 108 AC, where Daemon styled himself King of the Narrow Sea and used Caraxes to burn Triarchy fleets and fortifications. At the Battle above the God's Eye, around 130 AC, Daemon and Caraxes faced off against Aemon and Vhagar. Despite Vhagar being much larger, Caraxes' ferocity made the fight devastating. He latched onto Vhagar's throat mid-air. Both dragons fell locked together. Caraxes died from his wounds but ensured that Vhagar died with him. Meleys the Red Queen earned her nickname thanks to her scarlet and copper coloring and her regal bearing. One of the swiftest dragons alive, she could outperform larger dragons in speed and agility. First ridden by Princess Alyssa, she later bonded to Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was. In House of the Dragon, Meleys appears as Rhaenys' mount during the succession crisis. At Aegon's coronation, Rhaenys and Meleys burst through the dragon pit floor in an overwhelming show of power, but chose not to incinerate the Greens. At Rook's Rest around 129 AC, Rhaenys engaged both Aegon on Sunfyre and Aemond on Vhagar simultaneously. Despite Meleys' speed and Rhaenys' experience, she was caught between the two opponents. Vhagar's enormous size proved decisive when she tore into Meleys from above, as Sunfyre attacked from another angle. Meleys fell, Rhaenys fell with her, and the Blacks lost their fastest dragon and most experienced rider. Syrax was born during the reign of Jaehaerys I. She was a yellow dragon bonded to Rhaenyra from youth and named after a Valyrian goddess. Smaller than war dragons, House of the Dragon depicts Syrax as Rhaenyra's companion, beautiful and regal but inexperienced in combat. She did, however, lay several clutches of eggs, contributing to the breeding program. Syrax appears frequently throughout House of the Dragon Seasons 1 and 2 as Rhaenyra's personal mount. During the dance, Syrax remained closely tied to Rhaenyra. When Rhaenyra briefly held King's Landing in 130 AC, Syrax was kept at the Red Keep rather than inside the Dragon Pit. During the storming, Joffrey Balerion tried to ride her to the pit, but Syrax threw him to his death. Drawn by the bloodshed, she later descended on the mob and was killed there. Her death became attached to competing legends almost immediately. Different stories credit the shepherd, a crossbowman named Bean, or a knight named Sir Warwick Wheaton, who is said to have slashed Syrax's wing with a Valyrian steel sword. Sunfyre the Golden had gleaming gold scales and rose-pink wing membranes and was considered the most beautiful dragon ever seen. Bonded to Aegon II, he became a symbol of Aegon's claim. In fact, Aegon's golden banner was chosen specifically to honor his dragon. But Sunfyre was far more than a symbol. At Rook's Rest around 129 AC, he fought alongside Vhagar against Meleys. Though smaller than both, he engaged Meleys in a ferocious fight. Though victorious, he was grievously wounded, suffering a shattered wing, deep gashes, and extensive burns. Sunfyre remained grounded for months, unable to fly. When dragons returned to Dragonstone, he killed Grey Ghost, despite his wounds. His most brutal act is yet to come in House of the Dragon, so we won't spoil that here. Sunfyre's final battle came against Baela on Moondancer. Sunfyre killed Moondancer but sustained fatal injuries. With his death came the end of Aegon's dragon power. And if you want more deep lore, don't forget to hit subscribe. Seasmoke was a pale silver-gray dragon, first ridden by Sir Laenor Velaryon, son of Corlys Velaryon and Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. Mid-sized but formidable, he later became one of the key dragons of the dance. If you are following book canon, Laenor died in 120 AC, after which Seasmoke remained riderless for years. If you are following House of the Dragon, Laenor instead faked his death and fled to Essos, leaving Seasmoke behind. During the dance, Seasmoke was claimed by Adam of Hull, a bastard of Driftmark later legitimized as Adam Valyrion, as depicted in Season 2 of House of the Dragon. Seasmoke quickly proved his worth at the Battle of the Gullet, where he fought for the Blacks during one of the war's most important naval clashes. He went on to fight at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, where he was killed in a savage clash with Vermithor in 130 AC. Vermax and Arrax were young dragons bonded to Jacaerys and Lucerys Velaryon. Vermax was olive green with orange wings, while Arrax was white with yellow eyes. Both hatched from eggs placed in the prince's cradles, establishing bonds from birth. In Season 1, both appear as adolescents, large enough to ride but not battle-ready. During Jacaerys' mission to the north, around 129 AC, Vermax proved capable of long flights despite his youth. Arrax met his tragic demise at Storm's End. Caught in a storm and pursued by Aemond on Vhagar, the terrified Arrax breathed fire at the much larger dragon in instinctive self-defense. This provoked Vhagar beyond Aemond's control. Despite his commands, Vhagar attacked and killed both Arrax and Lucerys, tearing the smaller dragon apart. The incident demonstrated the fatal danger of young riders on young dragons, facing battle-hardened opponents. Vermax survived longer, participating in several naval battles before being killed around 130 AC. Moondancer, Tessarion, and other dance dragons. Moondancer was a young pale green she-dragon ridden by Baela Targaryen. Slender, quick, and no larger than a warhorse when Baela first rode her in 130 AC, she died fighting the wounded Sunfyre on Dragonstone, but not before inflicting the injuries that doomed him as well. Tessarion, the Blue Queen, was a beautiful blue dragon with dark cobalt wings and bright copper claws, crest and belly scales, ridden by Prince Daenerys Targaryen. She fought in the Southern War, including the Battle of the Honeywine, and died after the Second Battle of Tumbleton in 130 AC when she became entangled in a savage three-way fight with Seasmoke and Vermithor. Though she outlived Seasmoke, she was left mortally wounded and was later mercy-killed by archers. Morning was a pale pink she-dragon who hatched during the dance and bonded with Lady Rhaena Targaryen on Dragonstone. She was too young to fight, and she survived the war. After the dance, she made her lair in the ruins of the Dragon Pit. Records do not fully confirm an early death for her, so she is better treated as a surviving symbol of the last generation of Targaryen dragons, rather than as an early casualty of their decline. Tyraxes, Stormcloud, Morgul, and Shrykos were all young dragons bonded to royal children. Stormcloud, Morgul, and Shrykos were especially young, while Tyraxes had grown strong enough for long flights but was still not ready for war. Tyraxes, Morgul, and Shrykos died during the storming of the Dragon Pit in 130 AC. Tragically, Stormcloud died after his very first flight. While crossing the Narrow Sea, a ship carrying the young dragon and his rider, 9-year-old Aegon III, came under attack from Triarchy ships. Stormcloud managed to fly Aegon safely to Dragonstone, only to succumb to his wounds soon after. Aegon, better known to history as the Dragonbane, never flew again. Balerion the Black Dread was born in Valyria before 114 BC, named for an old god of Valyria, and carried west to Dragonstone by the Targaryens before the Doom destroyed the Freehold. He was already mature when Valyria perished, making him a living bridge between the Dragonlord Empire's final decades and the rise of Targaryen monarchy. He became known as the Black Dread, the name capturing both his coloring and his ability to induce fear in Targaryen opponents as the largest living weapon ever seen. At full power, the Black Dread's fire could melt steel and stone. His wingspan could cast shadow over entire towns. His teeth were sword-length and his jaws wide enough to swallow Aurochs whole. But by 93 AC, he had become so heavy that long flights exhausted him. Aegon I claimed Balerion before the conquest, and Balerion became his decisive aerial force, alongside Visenya on Vhagar and Rhaenys on Meraxes. At Harrenhal, he burned the fortress with flames so intense that the stone towers melted and twisted. At the Field of Fire around 1 AC, Dragonfyre killed thousands and broke the combined reach in Westerland's army in a single afternoon. Songs credit Balerion with forging the Iron Throne by melting defeated enemies' swords. After Aegon's death in 37 AC, Maegor I became Balerion's rider, and the dragon's role shifted from conquest to enforcement. In 43 AC, at the battle beneath the God's Eye, Maegor on Balerion met Aegon the Uncrowned on Quicksilver. Balerion's overwhelming size proved decisive, destroying both dragon and rider. Prince Viserys I became Balerion's final rider in 93 AC, but by this time the dragon had grown ancient and sluggish. Balerion died of old age in 94 AC during Jaehaerys I's reign at over 200 years old. His skull was preserved in the Red Keep. In the books, it had once hung in the throne room before being moved to the cellars, and in the television series, Cersei and Qyburn later examine it beneath the castle. Enjoying the video? Don't forget to leave a like. Meraxes is thought to have been born on Dragonstone between 114 and 88 BC, before maturing into one of the three dragons that made Aegon's conquest possible. Named after a Valyrian god, she was distinguished by silver scales and golden eyes. Her sole rider was Queen Rhaenys, and their partnership became famous for speed, daring, and public spectacle. Rhaenys spent more time in the air than her siblings, using Meraxes as both a weapon and a rapid transport option. During the conquest, Meraxes helped secure submission near the Targaryen beachhead. She also helped to create the field of fire that wiped out House Gardener in a matter of minutes. As the northern kingdoms fell, Dorne remained beyond the Iron Throne's control, and in 4 AC, the First Dornish War began. It was to be Meraxes' final campaign. In 10 AC at Hellholt, an iron scorpion bolt struck Meraxes through the eye. Both dragon and rider fell from the sky. In her death throes, Meraxes smashed the castle's highest tower and damaged sections of its wall. Her death proved dragons could be killed by ground weapons targeting the correct weak point, more evidence of which we will see later. Meraxes' skull was eventually returned by a Dornish peace delegation in 13 AC. The rest of her bones remained at the Hellholt, where they were put on display. Vhagar hatched on Dragonstone in 52 BC and became arguably the second most consequential dragon after Balerion. Named after a Valyrian god, she was claimed by Visenya before the conquest, and grew into the longest-living dragon of all, living through the rise and near destruction of the Targaryen dynasty. Vhagar was bronze with greenish-blue highlights and bright green eyes. Under Visenya, she played a key role in the conquest, most notably at the Field of Fire. By the dance, she had grown almost as large as Balerion. Her breath could melt a knight's armor and cook him inside it, while legend claimed her roar could shake Storm's End's foundations. By 130 AC, she was unmatched among living dragons, ancient, scarred, ferocious, and truly massive. After Visenya died in 44 AC, Vhagar went unridden for 29 years before Prince Balin claimed her in 73 AC. She then passed to Lady Laena Velaryon. When Laena died around 120 AC, 10-year-old Aemond claimed Vhagar. This incident, where the young Targaryen snuck off to woo the dragon, sparked a violent confrontation at Driftmark. But while the volatile prince lost an eye, he gained the most powerful dragon alive. After a volatile meeting at Storm's End, Aemond rode Vhagar in pursuit of Lucerys Velaryon and Arrax, killing both above Shipbreaker Bay. This act of kinslaying plunged the realm into civil war. At Rook's Rest around 129 AC, Vhagar and Sunfyre killed Meleys and Rhaenys. Vhagar's size proved decisive. She tore into Meleys while Sunfyre also struck. In the books, Vhagar's final battle comes at the God's Eye around 130 AC. She meets Daemon on Caraxes in an epic duel between the realm's greatest dragon riders. Despite Vhagar's superior size, Caraxes locked onto her throat and ripped it out. Both dragons crashed into the lake. Vhagar died from the fall at the mighty age of 181. Quicksilver was one of the first Targaryen dragons born after the conquest, hatching on Dragonstone in 7 AC. A she-dragon who produced pale white fireballs, Quicksilver was bonded to King Aenys and then to his son, Aegon Targaryen. When Aenys died in 42 AC, his son was denied the throne in favor of Maegor the Cruel. Then in 43 AC, Aegon the Uncrowned challenged his uncle's rule. At the battle beneath the God's Eye, young Aegon on Quicksilver faced Maegor on the massive Balerion. Balerion was about 4 times her size, and the fight was brief and brutal. Balerion tore Quicksilver apart mid-air, sending both dragon and rider crashing to earth. Both died instantly. Quicksilver's death marked the first dragon-on-dragon kill in Westerosi history, establishing a terrible precedent and predicting the carnage of the Dance of the Dragons. Dreamfyre was a pale blue she-dragon with silver markings, first ridden by Princess Rhaena Targaryen around 35 AC. She later bonded with Queen Helaena Targaryen, as seen in House of the Dragon Season 1. Her most significant contribution to Westerosi history comes through the theory that it was her petrified eggs, stolen from Dragonstone, that were given to Daenerys received by Illyrio Mopatis. The timeline and descriptions align with eggs that disappeared from Targaryen vaults and resurfaced in Essos, making Dreamfyre the potential ancestral link to Dragon's rebirth. Dreamfyre died during the storming of the pit in 130 AC. Chained and enraged, she snapped loose, rose into the air, and crashed into the dome, helping bring the roof down. Vermithor. Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, was a massive bronze-scaled male dragon first ridden by King Jaehaerys I during his long reign. He was closely linked to Silverwing, the dragon of Queen Alysanne, and the two are often treated as a mirror image of the royal partnership. By the time of the Dance of the Dragons, he was almost a century old and one of the largest dragons alive. Among Targaryen dragons, only Balerion and Vhagar had been larger. After Jaehaerys died in 103 AC, Vermithor remained riderless on Dragonstone for decades, making his lair in the smoking caverns of the Dragon Mount. His size, age, and battle value made him one of the most coveted unclaimed dragons when the Blacks began seeking new riders. In House of the Dragon, Hugh Hammer's successful claiming of Vermithor becomes central to Rhaenyra's war effort. Silverwing. The she-dragon of Queen Alysanne Targaryen, Silverwing likely hatched from an egg placed in Alysanne's cradle in 36 AC. Compared with the great war dragons, she had a gentler reputation and later remained riderless after Alysanne's death. During the Dance of the Dragons, Silverwing, like Vermithor, returned to prominence. In the Sowing of the Seeds, seen in House of the Dragon Season 2, Silverwing was claimed by Ulf the White, showing that dragon riders could be found beyond the core royal line among common-born people of Valyrian descent. Silverwing famously refused to fly beyond the Wall, even when Alysanne urged her north 3 times, fueling countless fan theories about ice, fire, and the ancient magic of the Wall. The wild dragons lived on Dragonstone and never bonded by traditional methods. The cannibal was coal-black with green eyes, and it was claimed by the small folk that had been on Dragonstone even before the Targaryen arrival in 114 BC. He earned his name by feeding on dead dragons, eggs, and hatchlings, and his lair was littered with bones of would-be tamers. He lived in the Dragon Mount smoking caverns, violently rejecting all bonding attempts. Next we have Grey Ghost, who was pale gray-white, shy and reclusive, avoiding human contact. During the dance, Sunfyre killed him near Dragonstone in dragon-on-dragon combat. Sheepstealer was muddy brown, and did as his name suggested, raiding sheep from local farms. He eventually bonded with peasant girl Nettles during the dance. Nettles accomplished this by patiently feeding the dragon sheep over days, building trust with the creature. Both Nettles and Sheepstealer survived the dance and disappeared into the mountains of the moon. Could there still be wild dragons out there? Let us know what you think in the comments. Nagga. Before the Targaryens brought dragons to Westeros, ancient legends spoke of fearsome creatures that shaped early history. Nagga was one of these, a sea dragon of the Iron Islands during the Age of Heroes, roughly 8,000 to 10,000 BC. According to Ironborn legend, Nagga fed on krakens and leviathans. Nagga was so enormous that after the Grey King slayed her, her ribs and jawbones formed the structure later known as the Grey King's Hall on the island of Old Wick. The ruined scale became legendary, a ring of great ribs standing like a ruined colonnade on Nagga's hill beside Nagga's cradle. This became the site where the Ironborn held kingsmoots for generations. Over time, it evolved into a shrine to Ironborn identity, turning the Grey King's victory over a creature of myth into the foundation of their kingship itself. Urrax belonged to the heroic age of mainland Westeros and survived through song and legend for thousands of years. As detailed in A Dance with Dragons, when Haldon Halfmaester speaks with Tyrion, he was slain by Serwyn of the Mirror Shield. Legends tell that Serwyn approached with a polished, highly reflective shield. This disrupted Urrax's attention long enough for the bearer of the shield to drive a spear through the dragon's eye. The deed was remembered as a lesson in technique. Even a mighty dragon could fall if a human found the correct angle and weak point. When dragon warfare returned under the Targaryens, the eye again proved decisive in several famous deaths, but more on that later. Drogon was the largest and most aggressive of Daenerys' dragons, named for Khal Drogo. He hatched from a black egg with red markings around 298 AC after Daenerys walked into the flames of Drogo's funeral pyre. He was one of a trio of baby dragons, the first born in over a century. Drogon's black scales with scarlet highlights and crimson eyes drew comparisons to Balerion the Black Dread. From hatching, he displayed more independence and aggression than his siblings, often disobeying Daenerys or acting on predatory instincts. He became her primary mount. Drogon first proved his worth at Astapor around 300 AC when Daenerys used him to kill slaver Krasnys Mona Close after the Unsullied Exchange. Even when young and small, his dragonfire terrorized slavers and established Daenerys' power. As he grew, he became increasingly difficult to control, eventually disappearing for extended periods to hunt. By Season 5, Drogon had grown large enough to carry Daenerys. During an assassination attempt in Daznak's pit in Meereen, Drogon arrived and incinerated sons of the Harpy attackers, allowing Daenerys to climb onto his back and escape. This marked the first time she truly rode a dragon in combat. In Season 7, Drogon participated in the Loot Train attack, destroying a Lannister convoy. During this battle, Drogon was wounded by a scorpion bolt from Bronn, proving modern dragons remained vulnerable to well-aimed weapons. During the mission Beyond the Wall, Drogon carried Daenerys north to save Jon Snow's men. When the Night King's ice spear killed Viserion mid-flight, Drogon was lucky to get out alive. Later, Drogon served as Daenerys' mount at Winterfell, engaging undead Viserion in aerial combat. His most devastating action came during the King's Landing sack. After the bells rang in surrender, Daenerys and Drogon began systematically burning the city. They destroyed the Iron Fleet, burned the Golden Company, and reduced much of King's Landing to ash, demonstrating the same overwhelming destructive power Balerion once wielded. The attack killed thousands. In the finale, after Jon Snow killed Daenerys, Drogon discovered her body. Rather than kill Jon, Drogon turned his rage on the Iron Throne itself. He melted it. The symbol of power that had driven Daenerys to madness ceased to exist. Drogon then picked up Daenerys' body and flew east toward Volantis or possibly Old Valyria. Where they went remains one of the series' great unresolved mysteries. Rhaegal and Viserion were Daenerys' other two dragons, named for her brothers Rhaegar and Viserys. They hatched alongside Drogon in Drogo's funeral pyre. Rhaegal had emerald-green scales with bronze highlights and bronze eyes. Viserion had cream-colored scales with gold markings and red-gold eyes. Both grew alongside Drogon but remained smaller and less aggressive. While Daenerys rode Drogon most frequently, Rhaegal and Viserion served as backup and symbols of her legitimacy. The three participated together in early conquests. At Astapor, all three breathed fire on command, helping seize the Unsullied. At Yunkai and Meereen, the dragons served as weapons of terror. However, when a young girl was killed in Meereen, Daenerys chained Rhaegal and Viserion in the catacombs. The two remained imprisoned while Drogon roamed free. When Daenerys opened the catacombs in Season 6, they had grown larger and more aggressive. They rejoined her forces and flew to Westeros. Viserion's fate changed in Season 7. During the mission Beyond the Wall, the Night King threw an ice spear that pierced Viserion's neck. He screamed, crashed through the frozen lake, and died in the black water below. The Night King then resurrected Viserion, an undead dragon with blue eyes and blue fire that could melt the wall itself. Undead Viserion burned through Eastwatch, allowing the army of the dead to march south. At Winterfell in Season 8, undead Viserion served as the Night King's mount, fighting Drogon and Rhaegal in aerial combat. When the Night King was killed, Viserion collapsed permanently. Rhaegal survived Winterfell but was wounded. In Season 8, while flying toward King's Landing, Rhaegal was ambushed by Euron's Iron Fleet. Scorpion bolts struck him multiple times. He fell into the sea off Dragonstone, felled by the same weapon that killed Meraxes 3 centuries earlier. Rhaegal's death left Drogon as Daenerys' only dragon, significantly weakening her forces. The loss also drove Daenerys toward burning King's Landing, as grief over losing 2 children accelerated her descent into madness. If you enjoyed this comprehensive guide to every named dragon in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into Westerosi history. Thanks for watching.